Good morning and welcome to the first live Council Matters for 2014. I'm Mick Fitz and we've got a great programme for you because we'll have a live guest in the studio, and later in the programme we will be joined by our council correspondent Colin McStay, and he'll be telling us all about the budget meeting for Dublin City Council last night. But first of all, I will introduce you to our guest in the studio. The guest is Simon Hall, and Simon will be running in the Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown Council, and he'll be running for Killiney and Shankill. So, Simon, welcome to Council Matters.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah. Simon, I've been saying to people, we have an opportunity now. It's a new election, the first really since we've, if you like, come to terms to a certain degree with the crisis. I'm saying we need new faces, new identities with fresh ideas. Are you going to be one of them?
I certainly hope so. Yeah, I think there's a big problem with revenge elections, so people using the local elections as a way of getting back at the sitting government, for example. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to get away from that, move forward with more positive suggestions for improving our communities.
Let's have a look at who is Simon Hall. You're 29 years of age. You're working in the hospitality industry, I would call it. Feel free to correct me on that one.
That's right, yeah.
And you've got a degree in astrophysics. How do you get from astrophysics to the hospitality industry? Practicality, is that, I would imagine?
I did science in Trinity, so that was my main focus for a long time. But then I sort of veered into politics while I was at college because I got involved with the Students' Union there, and eventually becoming an officer for the Students' Union. So that kind of piqued my interest in politics.
Looking at some of the people we've had, we've currently got as student politicians. We've got two of them in the cabinet. Do you think that's probably something you might play down with?
Very, very possibly. It's not the reason really that I'm running. The proximate cause of my campaign in the local elections is really the degeneration of Dun Laoghaire, as I see it.
Okay. So. Just moving along then, Simon, I mean, astrophysics, and then you get to as I say, you're working at a large leisure establishment is the way I will put it.
Right.
I don't want to commercialise it. Am I right in thinking that the opportunities for your linear degree probably shrunk considerably after you graduated, or did you just decide to have a change of career path?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of, I suppose it's both really. There was limited, availability of jobs in the sciences, but really I also moved into doing a master's in history after doing the sciences. So I wasn't really interested in pursuing a career in down that path.
Okay. The other one which leapt out at me from your CV is you're studying Arabic. Now I thought, is this a misprint? Is he studying aerobics? But now Arabic, that's a very interesting one. What's the background to that? What's the idea? What's the thinking?
It's again my interest in history and politics and that sort of thing, and interest in the Middle East particularly, and trying to understand the issues that are involved there. So being able to speak Arabic would be, a plus if you're trying to do that.
So there's no business interest in that?
No, it's purely an interest, historical and political.
Okay, now the reason why I ask, and I don't read anything into it other than the fact that the only people I've tended to know who study Arabic were those who had a business interest in it and who had business connections to the Middle East, or those who were converting to be fundamentalist Muslims. I'm talking about people from our neck of the woods. Sure. You don't seem to be either, which is a very interesting take on it. No,
I mean, the business interest, I mean, it is one of the best languages alongside Chinese to learn if you're going to go down that road, but I'm not interested in developing any business contacts in the Middle East, nor am I intending to convert to Islam.
Okay, I know that, as I say, it's we could get seriously sidetracked on that issue, which we are not going to do at the moment. Something that you've put out a statement and you've listed a few priorities and that's why we will come to it. But I'm just wondering, you've decided to go for local government, and you've also then decided to go Killiney, Shankill, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
What's your connection? Do you have a connection to that area, or did you grow up in that sense, or is this where you live? Either is valid. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, sure. No, I've grown up my entire life in Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown in Killiney, the Killiney Ballyblack area. So I went to primary school, secondary school there, lived there my entire life. So that's the main reason.
I mean, generally, Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown, the Dáil constituencies, they're seen as some of the most, shall we say, materially advantaged in the country. Some people often wonder, how do far left parties get elected in areas like that? But is that a misinterpretation of the demographic out there?
I would say it's a mischaracterization because it's quite a mixed bag. I mean, you have you've Shankill, Ballybrack, Killiney, and parts of Dalkey all in that constituency. So it's a complete mixed bag.
But I suppose Shankill aside, most of the other places you've mentioned, my experience is that compared to some of the parts of the north side, these are pretty decent sort of neighbourhoods, and I mean that in the sense of in material welfare rather than social or anything.
Yeah, that's true. But there are social issues within that constituency. I mean, in terms of youth unemployment and the elderly aging well within those areas, people isolated and that sort of thing. There's a lot going on.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, but that wouldn't be unique to Dun Laoghaire in that sense. But I would be surprised, for instance, if Dun Laoghaire had significant homelessness. Dublin has what I think last count 135 people sleeping out.
Yes.
Dun Laoghaire, I suspect, probably for a variety of reasons doesn't have that.
It wouldn't be
issue.
as bad as the city centre for sure, no, but there is still a problem, and there's also a problem with drug abuse and that sort of thing in the area as well. So, I mean...
Okay. The council, you've decided to do that. Many people take the council as a stepping stone. Whether you decide to progress in that, why did you decide at this point in time to run for the council, and particularly as an independent?
Well, really, as I say, the main motivating factor was the degeneration of Dun Laoghaire as I see it, insofar as you have shops, pubs and clubs closing on a weekly basis. You have people shopping in Dundrum and going into the city centre for leisure and entertainment and that sort of thing. So Dun Laoghaire it's in a kind of a downward spiral. And I feel that something must be done, and the younger people especially in the area have to step up and do something. And the reason I'm running as an independent is because I don't want to get involved in party politics. I think national parties with their national agendas have a very limited role to play on a local level. It should be more the community getting together and electing people who have a vision.
Yeah. Isn't that, shops open, businesses closed, isn't that just a natural part of what we would call the business evolution, part of the business cycle? I mean, yes, they were in Dun Laoghaire 10 years ago, now they're in Dundrum. Isn't it up to Dun Laoghaire to get more competitive? Isn't that more attractive, as we say?
Absolutely, and that would be one of my priorities, would be trying to make Dun Laoghaire a bit more attractive. A lot of the businesses there say that parking charges and so on are affecting footfall in Dun Laoghaire, and therefore badly affecting especially the retail business.
But when I think I'm going to go to shop A versus shop B, or location A versus location B, parking is probably a low down. It's either quality or price are my determining factors, and the issue, and I'm not knocking you in that regard, but it seems to me tinkering around the edges ain't going to bring back that sort of retail trade in an area that's maybe you need to change it.
That's a fair point, but really, I mean, there was a survey done by UCD recently that found that whereas shopping was originally in the last decade or so the main motivation for people going to Dun Laoghaire, now it's leisure. Okay. So you're walking the pier, the cinema, going to the theatre, that sort of thing. So that's why one of my priorities would be arts and culture. So promoting, for example, the Festival of World Cultures was lost to Dun Laoghaire in 2010. That was a fantastic attraction. And trying to boost tourism to the area as well would be another one of my main priorities. So It's not just retail business that
Okay.
I'm running on.
Good point, or fair point in that sense. How do you think that the council can play a role in that? Isn't tourism the sort of thing that really is best as a national, or do you see Dun Laoghaire having a separate tourist strategy all of its own, or separate from Dublin and separate from even the rest of the country?
Like lots of the issues we're talking about today, there's a national basis for them, like youth unemployment and tourism and all that sort of thing. But you have to be active on a local level as well. So, for example, the Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council commissioned a report about tourism in the area, and it found that Dun Laoghaire lacked a clear image and identity for itself in terms of marketing itself, both in Ireland and abroad, and they've done little or nothing since then about that. So I think we should be concentrating on trying to bring people to Dun Laoghaire, because there's a lot there on offer. You know, you have the Granite Piers, the promenade, you have public parks, you have museums, you have the theatre. There's a lot going on in Dun Laoghaire that people aren't really aware of as well.
So, is there any limit to that, or what sort of boundaries would you put on that? I mean, for instance, you could turn the areas that aren't selling very well, you could perhaps turn them into nightclubs and discos and all of that. Would that be the sort of thing you had in mind, or is it polite cafe society? You don't often get a choice in these matters when one is dealing with the less hand. What sort of, if you like, and I appreciate there's a limited amount you can tell us here.
Yeah.
What sort of do you have there? The Lord Mayor of Dublin is very clear in the sense that he gives us a vague one and says family-oriented entertainment. That's great.
Okay.
But what about the evening? So I'm just wondering, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think we need more art galleries, coffee shops, discos?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think all of the above, but there's a new library and cultural centre that's almost finished being built in Dun Laoghaire, and once that comes on stream, you'll have an art gallery, as you say, you'll have a performance space, and these things can be used, in a cultural sense for all sorts of things, like perhaps a TEDx event. I don't know if you're familiar with the TED lectures, but they're
Tell me, I'm a different generation, Simon, so you please.
Well, there's the hugely popular set of lectures where you invite in speakers to talk about technology, education, entertainment, any thought-provoking topic, and you run these events. Dublin did one a couple of years ago. I think Dun Laoghaire could do the same, especially once this new cultural centre has been completed. So.
I'll give you the one controversial question. What brought me out to Dun Laoghaire last year was, again, you could argue a tourist or a cultural event, but I didn't go out there with a positive frame of mind, and I came away with a less positive frame of mind after. Right. And that was the Maritime Museum controversy, which I don't know if you're familiar with. We decided, this is why I'm asking you, is there limits? Yeah. We decided we'd attract a few more visitors by having a bit of controversy, and we will have a Nazi flag about 7 or 8 feet away from an Israeli flag. I thought that was grossly offensive.
Yeah,
and I can understand why they did it in the marketing sense, but I thought, lads, that wasn't good. The council seemed to have no control over that when we talked to them about it. Is that something you would like to see the council at least have a bit more say in if you're going to attract people out there?
In terms of causing controversy,
if you're going to put on cultural events, like our friend in France, you'll always, you can. This was the point I make. If you've got strippers out in Dun Laoghaire, probably you'll get a lot more traffic coming out there. Yeah. Is that the sort of tourism you want? I don't know. I suspect not.
No. Well, as a council, I mean, the ideal thing would be to be inclusive. So the Festival of World Cultures, for example, was very good at challenging stereotypes and mixing cultures together and giving people. That's a more progressive way of doing things than say.
Well, if you listen to my interview with Mayor Looney, I asked him about putting on Tala Pride because he wanted Dublin Pride to be moved out there. Yeah. What about Dun Laoghaire Pride? Isn't that a great scope for inclusivity and colour and...
very good point, good suggestion. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to see that.
Mm-hmm. Looking, I want to just, there are other areas, Simon, that we could look at, but I just wanted to go through what you have listed as your priorities if you get elected. Fairness. Now, I'm not really too sure what I understand by that, and obviously if I don't, the electorate might be a bit
it's a
confused.
vague enough notion as it stands here.
Can you explain just in what you mean by that in, say, a local government context?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think fairness, there should be a principle of fairness employed by councillors themselves in terms of the benefits and expenses that they take. So there's been a culture of trying to extract, as much money as possible by claiming outrageous expenses. That's one thing that should stop.
Yeah.
Then there's also, we've witnessed in the Limerick City of Culture recently, unfairness in practice in terms of recruitment within local authorities, so that should stop. Those would be two concrete examples that give some body to the...
When you talk about a principle, I would have said we should have had a protocol. In other words, there are some standards there, they're clear, they're transparent, they're accountable.
Yeah.
Is that what you were implying? In other words, if you get expenses, we can't object to people. If people are getting expenses legitimately, that's fine, let us know.
Absolutely, yeah.
What you're getting it for. That to me seems basic. Is that not there in Dun Laoghaire?
It is, and the expenses that are claimed are published by the council, but many councillors throughout the country are still claiming crazy expenses. There was one councillor, I think the maximum claimed was €80,000 in 1 year for all sorts of different...
that's nice money if he can get it, isn't it? He must have been a
course.
very busy man. That's all I can. Well, we had in on CouncilMatters in late last year. We had two councillors in from Dublin City Council, and one was raising the issue that he said that yes, we get all of that stuff published, as you say, but if you're working for a Dun Laoghaire Vocational Education Committee or the Horticultural Committee or something like that, you don't actually get to hear about that stuff. In other words, there are a few off-balance sheet expenses there. Would you like to see that brought under what we would call the regulatory protocols?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. That's the main thing.
Local rejuvenation. What's all that about then, Simon?
Well, so Dun Laoghaire has had a lot of regeneration in terms of roads being rebuilt and that sort of thing. But there's not many people visiting Dun Laoghaire anymore. We need proper rejuvenation in terms of arts and culture, tourism. That's what I mean by trying to recreate what Dun Laoghaire was, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago before things started going south. Okay,
I want to just, before we conclude, because Colin is coming in to tell us about the Dublin City Council. I mentioned to you outside the June 2007 was when my daughter graduated, and November 2007 was when she got her degree. If you go back 7 years, and it's not that long ago, people like yourselves, and certainly her generation, they were filled with optimism and positivity that, we're out there to claim our birthright, which is a good job and a good salary. What did your generation learn from that whole experience? Because, quite honestly, I think the lessons are only starting to be learned now, and that's why I'm so keen on hearing what fresh faces have with new ideas about preventing things like that ever happening again.
Well, it's an extraordinarily difficult question. How to prevent another crash? Well,
was it cultural or was it structural, or was it a combination of both?
Well, probably a combination of both. But I think that I do buy into the notion that guaranteeing the banks was the first mistake. That just destroyed the country making that decision. I can understand the reasons. I understood the reasons at the time, but it's we've seen the results of doing just that.
And yet the housing market is booming, the stock market is booming. I wonder exactly what we've learned.
Probably not much.
Yeah. We wish you all the best, Simon.
Thanks very much.
And we'll be letting people know on our Facebook site what you're up to as well. So Simon Hall,
that'd be great. Thanks
terrific for that.